Hello, everyone. It's great to have you all here today, and we're so excited to welcome you to the Carl the Collector panel. So Carl the Collector is a new show on PBS KIDS. It launched in November that features a warm-hearted raccoon named Carl. It's focused on kids ages 4 to 8, and he loves collecting things. He also has a laser-like focus on things he's interested in and is always trying to figure out how the world works. Carl is also the first PBS KIDS show to have a lead character on the autism spectrum. And so this has been a really unique and exciting show to work on, and that's part of what we're going to focus on here today. We want to tell you a little bit about what the show is about, but also how it's made and the authenticity around it. And it can live beyond the screen, also in classrooms and in homes. So here today to talk about the show, I'm pleased to introduce Zach O'Hora, who's the creator of the show, Lisa Whittick, who's the animation director, and Tim Frost.
Yes, and Odin is in the audience today, and if you hear some like stimming sounds, he's extra excited about this as well. So,
yeah, Odin. Nice to meet you.
And Odin is the actor portraying one of the newest characters in the Fuzzy Town world, Paolo. And we'll tell you more about Paolo soon. So that gives you a little overview of the show, but we've got the folks here who made it. So Zach, let's start with you. Tell us the backstory. How did you come to create Carl?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I just love raccoons. I'm kind of obsessed with raccoons. And I'm a collector, but I have two sons who are in high school now, but when they first started going to school, they went to an inclusion school, which was a totally new thing for me. And if you don't know what an inclusion school is, which I didn't, basically every kid in the school, no matter what their needs are, they get the same classroom time, the same social time with the teacher and the other kids. And what I noticed was that they were just friends with everybody. Nobody, didn't really stand out. It was just like, hey, different people have different needs throughout the day. And it really struck me that that's the way it should be. That was so different from how I grew up. And so that sort of formed the first ideas of Carl the Collector.
And it's based on your hometown, right? Like that's where you...
And it's based on a town that I'm sure no one's ever heard of, because I never did, called Narberth. It's in Pennsylvania, right next to Philly. You probably heard of the Eagles, maybe, but...
You got a little shout out in the back over there.
Yeah. Nice.
So Lisa, tell us a little bit about, the behind-the-scenes clip talks about making sure there's representation in all levels of production. But as the animation director, how did that play into casting the series? And talk a little bit about your own stake in the series as well.
Yeah, so when we went to cast Carl, the Collector, the main character Carl, the autistic character, we wanted to make sure, obviously, that he was also voiced by an autistic child. So we went through the normal channels of reaching out to agents and going, getting auditions and everything from different sources. And we didn't really find the right fit, so I suggested that maybe we reach out to a parent group that I belong to, because I'm a parent of an autistic son as well. And we thought, maybe we don't need an actual professional actor for this. Let's try and see if we can find just an autistic kid and work with him. So we reached out. On Facebook, I put a post in a closed group that I belong to, and we got dozens and dozens of auditions from different parents. And it was through this process that we ended up finding Kai, who you saw in the behind-the-scenes footage there. And we also found Maddie, who plays Lotta the fox, and several other of our background characters. So that was a really great experience, because just having them be themselves in the sound booth and, not read lines like an actor, it just gives that little extra bit of magic that we didn't even know we wanted at the beginning. It brings out the authenticity even more. So that was a really great little surprise for us to find those they're now actors. I call them actors because they are now. They're very professional little actors. And it's also rewarding to know that maybe they'll have a future employment doing this, which is sometimes a real fear as a parent of a neurodiverse child. You don't know what their future is going to look like necessarily. So, now they've got a really real chance of pursuing this if they choose to.
So there's a really special episode that we want to walk you through a little bit, kind of give you some behind the scenes of how these stories come together. This episode is called The Fall. And in that episode, Carl shares with his friends for the first time that he is autistic. And it's a really big moment for the whole group. So we want to walk it through with all of you here and kind of break it down a little bit. All right. I know everyone's like nervous right now. So Zach, tell us a little bit about how we landed here. This is not one of the first episodes in the show, but this is a really big one for Carl. It's a really big episode for the series.
Yeah. So originally the idea that I had about this show in general was I just wanted to like be representative of like everybody's life. So it wasn't like beating you over the head with like, this is a show about this or autism or whatever. So at first, I wasn't totally sure that we wanted to like go head on with, saying Carl is autistic. Maybe we would just do such an authentic representation of it that people would know. And when we got into testing and, getting feedback from different families and stuff, we kind of realized that we did actually need to address it, basically. And one of the great things, we have neurodiverse people throughout the whole production. One of our writers, Ava Rigelhaupt, this is her story, like from her life, and she talked about how different families act different. Like when they get a diagnosis, some people want to share, some people don't, and how you present to the rest of the world, before and after. And she also explained how autistic people sometimes their brains work differently, and you might explain something for one scenario, and if you could naturally sort of like take that thought and apply it to another scenario, it might not translate, and you might have to like talk about it again. So we ended up coming up with this storyline right from something that happened to her as a kid.
And so a few things happen there. We know we're not going to watch the whole piece, but Carl spends quite a bit of time talking this through with his mom. So speak a little bit about that, how the mom kind of helps coach him through, Carl's mom.
So, his mom is obviously like a very important caretaker in his life. And the other thing that you'll notice in these clips, he kind of goes to this like kind of weird world. And that's actually, we're going inside his brain, which is something we all worked out, and Lisa and I worked it out a bunch. We call it synapse junction, and it's literally designed on like synapses of your brain. So just a fun way to be able to show how someone's brain works differently. We have this little world we go to. So Carl will like recall what his mom tells him, and inside this world, inside his brain, he's collecting his thoughts. And often he'll say that, and they'll appear in the little synapses. And once he works through that little thought, it'll kind of go down to one of his collection jars. And it's just a really fun way to just see what a thought process might look like.
Sheldon, the beaver, there's Carl's best friend. I think you've talked about him as being kind of a translator for Carl, right?
Yeah, he's kind of that's exactly what I would describe it as. He's sort of like a translator for Carl to the world and a translator for the world to Carl sometimes. Everyone needs a Sheldon.
I think so. Wish we had a friend like Sheldon. So Carl ultimately is not the only character in the show who is on the spectrum. One of the regular characters, Lotta, the fox, is also autistic, although at the moment only Carl and the audience know that. And if you watch the show, you'll notice that Carl and Lotta present really differently, even though they're both on the spectrum. So Lisa, can you talk a little bit about how we developed these characters and how they kind of show different characteristics?
Yeah, we were really, really fortunate that we had a period of time before we got into like full production of the show where we were able to really flesh a lot of these things out because we knew that we couldn't necessarily handle these characters in your typical animated character fashion, we knew we wanted to show stimming with Carl. We knew
Can you explain stimming?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, please.
So stimming it can be like a buildup of energy that people who are neurodiverse or autistic have, where they will maybe wiggle their fingers, or they'll pace, or like Odin earlier was vocalizing. So it's just a way to get their energy out, and these are all things that we wanted to show visually to the audience who may or may not know someone in their own lives who are autistic. We had to try and figure out a visual way to explain that to the audience. So we worked with our animators, we worked with our advisors very closely, and figured out different ways to show stimming in Carl. And eye contact was another big thing. We wanted to make sure that we didn't hold eye contact for very long, because in my experience, my son would never look at me when he was, for any reason. So those are things that we worked out with Carl. But we knew with Lotta, the fox, we wanted to handle her autism differently, because autism is such a huge spectrum. And Carl has he's got his own version of autism, and Lotta has her own version of autism. So we, again, worked with the advisors, came up with kind of what they've seen in their own personal relationships with autistic people to develop Lotta's personality. And, Lotta, she tends to be a little bit more like on the messy side, whereas Carl is a bit of a neat freak. And, Carl really loves strong smells, and Lotta has an aversion to smells. So we're doing our best to kind of showcase as much of the spectrum as possible. And then finally, you saw in the clip with Carl that he went to Synapse Junction, and that's where he really kind of figured out his thoughts and worked through things. Whereas Lotta, she has synesthesia, which means that she actually can, it's when two senses kind of are combined together, from my understanding. And when she hears music, she can actually see shapes and colors associated with the music. So in the next clip that we're gonna see, you'll see Lotta using her synesthesia in a positive way so that she can work something out for herself. She's trying to figure out dance moves, and she's saying, this doesn't make sense with this note or whatever. She's looking at her friends as they're dancing. Other times, the synesthesia is a hindrance to her, and it's when she hears loud noises or sounds, she'll get overwhelmed by the synesthesia, and we also showcase that in the show as well.
So Lotta, as this story resolved, and I'm going to do a little shout out to the bunny twins there. They're Nico and Arugula. They're twins, and what I love about how they come into stories is, a lot of the show is about identity and who you are. And Nico and Arugula look exactly the same in their episodes where other kids in the friend group can't tell them apart, but they couldn't be more different. And in the resolution, what they discover is that they all have something different that they like to do. They were trying to teach Lotta the dance, but Lotta actually would rather play the music than do the dance. And one of the twins would rather dance, and the other would rather film it. So actually, they make a great team. So it's really interesting to watch how this comes through. But I'm sure you all noticed Lotta kind of freak out for a minute, like, wait, am I being different? Wait, let me pretend I'm not, right? Yep. And that comes up again in this series, like throughout, right?
Yeah. Lotta, what we learned from our advisors is that a lot of girls on the spectrum actually are very, very good at masking their symptoms. And so Lotta's no different. She does her best to kind of just fit into the group. And she even told Carl in one of the episodes that she's not comfortable disclosing her autism to her friends just yet. So Carl is the only one that knows. So yeah, it's really great to be able to show the different people with different autistic traits to the audience, so that hopefully the audience can see themselves in one of them.
And for people to see these different traits, but also neurotypical kids being friends with all of these kids, how that all kind of works together. Yeah. So as you can see, every character in Carl, each one is very thoughtfully created. And we knew early on, working with Zach, that you wanted to showcase even more characters on the spectrum. And so this is how Paolo came to be. And so Paolo is a pre-verbal kid on the spectrum whom Carl befriends. And so Tim Frost, as we introduced, is Odin Frost's dad, and Odin is the voice for Paolo.
Yes.
So can you tell us how you got connected with Zach? And we'll just talk a little bit about this character.
Yeah, so me and Zach's origin story is kind of funny and kind of cool. We met in the Shire in Hobbiton. No,
I don't remember that. Yeah.
It started with just a regular library visit. We take our son to the library once a week, and he loves picking out picture books. We believe that picture books are good for any age because they can tell a story simply and beautifully all at the same time. And you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but we saw a book called Niblet and Ralph.
Yeah.
And the cover was just amazing. The art was just really cool. So my Odin was drawn to it. And as we were going through this book, I'm looking and I see like a poster on the wall, and it's MF Doom. And I was like, wait, is it MF Doom poster in like this book? And then I see a Tribe Called Quest record vinyl. It's like, wait a minute, that's Tribe Called Quest. And then Jerry Garcia, and like I'm seeing all this stuff. I'm like, this dude knows music. Yeah. And so I found his tag on Instagram, and I took a photo of all of those pictures, and I tagged and said, this is amazing, thank you so much. And that kind of started a cool conversation with us with music, and we kind of just became online friends. This was 2019, and then a year later, he was telling me about this show about Carl. Like, man, in 2020, like he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about the music. I want like this cool 70s kind of vibe, kind of like jazz, and just something really, really like I feel like since we have the same music knowledge and the same music language, it might be beneficial to have you try to work on this pilot. And I was like, I'm down. And so for that was one of the funnest. I figured out that was one of the funnest things I've ever done musically. We all know in 2020 that the pandemic hit and everything got shut down. And I told Zach, I said, dude, no matter what happens, like I believe in this so much, just let's keep in contact. And here we are 5 years later, and we're still in contact.
Yeah, and we have this exciting new character that nobody has ever seen, and this is like the intro of it. It's very exciting.
World premiere.
Yeah, that's it. It's like Yo Raps on a Friday night.
So, Zach, before we watch the clip, let's talk a little bit about the evolution of Paolo. So how did Tim and his family fit into the Fuzzy Town universe? Like, how did Paolo get pulled into
Turns
this?
out they fit very well. You can see when you have like a quilt jacket on that you're right, perfect for Fuzzy Town. It's a beautiful jacket. So, one of the things that we've tried to do throughout this whole thing is like really, we're not trying to tell other people's stories. We want it to be authentically from people telling their own stories. And so the sort of through line through everything was always been, with Kai, who voices Carl and everybody, to like have their natural voices, come through, and that they're not like super acting. And, I'm really influenced by like the Peanuts specials and stuff. So we kind of carried that through the whole show. And we got a bunch of feedback about, we're trying to expand how much of the spectrum that we can show. And it kept coming up as like, do you have a character that might be like pre-verbal or non-speaking? And, so we thought about it for a while and kept talking to our advisors, and we got an expert advisor exactly on that. And as I kind of was sketching out the character, I was like, who could we find to, like, how do you get like basically a non-speaking character that's not an actor to come and do to be the actor for this? And then I was like, oh, the Frost family, Odin. And I was like, and I knew, already that like, those guys are good at like making music and videos and everything else, and realized that they could probably record Odin at home in a comfortable environment, and was hoping that they would be totally into it, and they were, and here we are. And I think it's like the perfect match, and I can't wait for you guys to see him.
Tim, can you tell us a little bit about Odin and his reaction to being cast in this series?
Yeah, so Odin was already a fan of this show, and he watches it, with a lot of autism, there's repetition is a huge thing. So we've seen some of the episodes over and over, maybe more than you guys sometimes. And so I said, I went up to Odin, I said, hey man, like I got something to tell you. And he's like kind of perked up. I was like, Zach, they have a character written for you for this show, and they want you to be on it. What do you think? And he goes, woo! It's like, I was like, is that a yes? He's like, yeah! And so like, yes, that was the most pure reaction we got from him from that.
So let's take a look. World premiere of Paolo, the first non-speaking, and in this case, pre-verbal character within Carl the Collector. So Tim, tell us about the way that Odin communicates. We saw this tablet in there, and I had to write it down, the Augmented Alternative Communication Device, an AAC device.
Yes.
Can you walk us through how Odin talks?
So there's a lot of ways Odin has learned to communicate through the years, and one of them is this device here. And so you can kind of see the different pictures on there. His favorite thing is making music, listening to it, and going on car rides. And so that's kind of like what we use the device for when, like if we're on a car, if we're already on a car trip, that also if he needs to use the restroom, stuff like that. But like Odin, he has different ways too. He is somewhat verbal. He can kind of speak a little bit, but this helps him to when he, like he can see the picture of exactly what he wants to do. Like if there's a Nintendo on there, he wants to push the button to play Nintendo, or if he wants to watch a movie, clicks that and wants to watch the movie. And the way we did it for the show is we went in and he does a lot of hand over hand when we do typing, and so we did hand over hand each script. And we did it 4 blocks at a time, and I said, okay, let's touch the first clip right here. And so we did that, and that's where you hear the talking and Carl. And I said, this is the reaction, like, how would you react to this? And so he did, and every time we got multiple takes of him reacting the same way, so we know, like, okay, yeah, this is really how he would react. And so that's kind of how we use the device for the show.
And it's what you're seeing here, obviously, is the one. We've got Odin's actual tablet next to the one that you all created for Paolo.
So cool.
So a lot of observation. Lisa, can you talk about how Odin helped us create, help the team create Paolo? I was asking Lisa. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know.
I'm like,
Somebody,
what? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Sarah. It's okay.
Animation person
Yeah,
in charge.
Sorry. Yes. So with Odin's character, Paolo, we didn't have the luxury of having that time to really spend months and months working out how are we going to do the animation for Paolo and what that's going to look like. So we actually did have a special advisor that came on board to help us with the tablet and also the mannerisms and things like that with Paolo's character. So that was really a great resource. But the main thing in animation, it's a very visual language. We just want to make sure we are able to portray everything we want to portray as easily for the audience to really grasp as possible. So when the animator went to do this little clip for us, I literally took a YouTube clip of Odin, just one of his daily things that he does, and he was very excited in this video, and I gave it to the animator, and I said, use this as reference. This is the actual voice actor who did Paolo, and just takes what you need from it, the snippets, because we don't want it to be overwhelming for the audience, but we want to portray as much of the mannerisms as possible. And I think she did an absolutely beautiful job at creating the Paolo character for us. So it's an amazing jumping off point for when we go into the full production of the episode, for sure.
We're very excited to share this whole episode with everyone once it's complete. It's just an exciting extension and continuation within the series.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that you all know that we'll have time for you to ask questions to the panel. So if you have any things you'd like to ask Zach or Lisa or Tim, please feel free to put that in the South by Southwest Go app so that we can get to those. But we have a little bit more that we can talk about here as a group. One thing is that, all PBS KIDS series are meant to be really activated in local communities. We want to make sure that these are shows that really can be taken to the kids who can really respond to them and react well to them. So this is just a moment to note the amazing PBS member stations all throughout the country. They have been leading all kinds of events and activations around Carl the Collector in local neighborhoods and in community centers, in libraries. I know that the Performing Arts Center in San Antonio is going to do a screening next month, and sensory-friendly activities. So really, reach out to your local station, look and see what's happening in your area, because there's a lot of things happening with Carl the Collector right now, which is really exciting. We also always make sure that we have educator materials available for our shows. And so if you are interested in learning more about Carl the Collector and how you can activate it in the classroom, they're all posted at pbslearningmedia.org. And there's a whole collection of Carl the Collector activities and ideas there. So once again, pbslearningmedia.org. All right, so the series has been getting a really incredible response. We've been hearing a lot from our member stations about viewers in their area responding. But I know, Zach, also a lot of people have been reaching out to you. So would you share just some of the stories, some of the things you're hearing from audience members?
I wasn't really prepared for some of this. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, but like just really beautiful stories. And like an example, somebody like DM'd me and they were like, our child just got diagnosed and we didn't know how to tell them. And Carl the Collector came on and they were watching the show and the kid goes to the parents and they're like, you know what, I think I'm like Carl the Collector. I think I might be autistic. And they're like, actually, and and it like provided that moment for, even for parents who like, no one's prepared for parenthood anyway in any form. So, but to start to have those conversations, and they were able to have that conversation, and it was like the perfect entree into that idea, and the kid was psyched. And there's been so many stories like that are like will bring you to tears. That are really, I don't know what I was thinking, but it's really been powerful and amazing to see how that touches people's lives, and I just can't believe I'm part of it.
And it came from your idea.
Yeah, I'm disassociated from that by now, but I'm taking credit.
It's pretty amazing, yeah. We have also been hearing about kids looking at some of the ways that Carl manages his own emotions, the ways he thinks through things, and mimicking them at home. So we're hearing from a lot of parents about this as well. So I think we have a clip of a kid who was using Carl's belly breaths.
Yeah, and from Austin, so shout out Austin PBS.
Austin PBS,
Yeah.
Thank you for connecting us to this story. So once again, member stations in action. They reached out and said, we have this amazing story about a little boy who had to go to the emergency rooms.
So good. He's got a job on the show whenever he wants it. Just call me.
We love it when we see these things like actually go into action. As the mom said, this is something in his tool chest now. He can always pull this out and do it. Zach, what are some of the most impactful responses you've received from the show?
That one right there was like, I just saw this for the first time this week, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't even believe it. There's been so many, and a lot of them are, often similar stories as what I shared before, but just collectively realizing how many people that autism affects and neurodiversity affects families, and just like, collectively it's just been an incredible outpouring of people responding positively that, they wished, when their kids were little that they had this show, and it's just been very overwhelming. To be honest, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of people, parents, reach out in my community just saying how much they love the show and how they can really, see themselves in the parents in the show as well. And I'm one of those families who, if Carl was out when my son was younger, we would have had him diagnosed much, much earlier. He was diagnosed around 12 years old, and so, it would have been a lot easier for us to help him navigate public school and like figure out how to help him, because it was a real struggle for those first few, 12 years of his life, not knowing how to help him. So I really am thrilled to be a part of it. It's like giving back to the community that I belong to. It's it's everything. It's amazing.
Tim, can you talk a little bit about what this show has meant to your family and what like kind of Odin's involvement has been?
I try not to cry on this one. Okay. This show, like I said, I wish it was around when Odin was younger, but also, like, we've been in the disability world for 22 years, and even if no one would ever, like this show that it was someone on the spectrum, it's done so authentically that it's just a beautiful representation of like the daily life that we live every day, and it's not easy. It's not something that it just comes easily to us, and seeing a show like this, it's just so beautiful to see, like, lots of families live the same life, and it helps us to feel connected to others, and just Odin being a part of this show, it changed my whole perspective of what like could happen for Odin. Like, this is, like I said, it's a job. It's a real job for him, and he enjoyed it. He had so much fun doing it. It impacted our family in such a way, like we were having a really rough, like last few months or whatever of that year, and when we got that call from Zach, man, it was just like, are you kidding me? What joy, what beautiful joy of authentic representation, like doing the show so correct, so right. I'm so grateful to be a part of it, be up on this panel, so thank you guys so much, seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Odin. And I just want to say, too, that like that, all that authentic, that whole press, that's PBS. Like, PBS is all about really getting it right and really making sure that, what you see is what you get, and it's the right thing, and it really has come through.
We know that there's been a lot of research that documents that when kids see characters who look like them and who act like them in media, that it can have a positive impact on their self-esteem and their success. And so that piece, that authenticity, making sure that we're really representing these kids as well as we possibly can and letting them see themselves is really central to our mission.
And fostering empathy, too.
Yes.
Right?
That's the number one.
Fostering empathy, yes. So if you have more questions, please put them in, but I see we have a few here. And we have a question from Ashley, who clearly is a fan because she knows something very specific here. My daughter is 5.5 and has ADHD, and she has related a lot with Forrest the squirrel. So you saw Forrest in that fall clip. You saw the squirrel come across and say, "That's so cool, Carl." Can you speak about Forrest and how he is meant to be representative of ADHD?
And yes, Ashley, you guessed correct. Forrest does have ADHD, and he's got a lot of energy and a lot of excitement, and it's kind of competitive sometimes. And but the other thing about Forrest, if you don't know, and this is the toughest part for Forrest, even more than that, he's a squirrel with a nut allergy. And when all your family, that's what they eat day in and day out, that's really tough. And thankfully, we have a nice pizza place around the corner, and that's also his favorite food, and he can get there really fast.
We actually do have a couple episodes where the main focus is Forrest and how he, maybe sometimes doesn't, he's very impulsive and he might do something that isn't necessarily in his best interest sometimes. And so we do touch on his ADHD as well. And especially one of the episodes I think we're working on right now, where we really actually showcase his ADHD, and he becomes overwhelmed by just like too much stuff going on. So we show that the same way we kind of show Carl's struggles and Lotta's struggles with those same sensory overload things. So yeah, it's again another great way to show more people.
And close observation by
Yeah.
the viewer. I love
Love it.
watching Forrest in episodes because the kids might all be doing something that feels like normal pace, but Forrest is like zoom, zoom, zoom through the whole thing. Yeah. All right. Next question. What are some ways that educators and parents can use Carl the Collector as a tool to foster conversations about neurodivergence?
That is a good question. First and foremost, just watching it with your kid. It's the hope for the show is that like parents and caretakers will watch the show with their kid, and maybe it's 6 a.m. and you haven't had your coffee yet, and it's not annoying, and it's like a peaceful, fun thing to watch together. There's tons of, like Sarah mentioned, on the PBS.org site, PBSkids.org.
PBSlearningmedia.org.
Yes, that was the one.
Yeah.
I go there all the time. There's all kinds of activities
Resources,
and information and resources, and there's all the different stations are having like sensory-friendly events, all that kind of stuff. So all those things are set up to be able to start having conversations between everyone.
Yeah, and there's games too on the PBS
Oh yeah,
Kids.
there's games.
Yeah,
there's really fun games.
Really fun games.
Yeah.
The first game on PBSKids.org and the PBS Kids Games app, both of which are free, by the way, as is the PBS Kids video app, all free to download. The first game is a collection game.
Yeah, you get to explore more of Fuzzy Town and collect stuff in your backpack and then bring it back and organize it. It's really, really fun, very addicting in a good way.
We always do a lot of play testing with kids when we're working on a new series, and right away, right out of the gate, kids were like, I want to explore that world. I want to go around this neighborhood. I mean, the art is so beautiful in Zach's style. So that game allows you to be a collector like Carl and explore the world.
Yeah, check it out.
It's a lot of fun. So what you all mentioned, resources on pbslearningmedia.org. I do also want to give a shout out to another station. Maryland Public Television has been a partner with the series and working with advisors to create activity guides for sensory-friendly experiences that kids can do related to the show, and really thinking about group activities. So these, are on learningmedia.org, but also are distributed to our stations so that they have some more guidance about how to engage in these kinds of activities on the local level. So there are lots and lots of ways that you can activate around Carl the Collector. And so I encourage you to look at pbslearningmedia.org, and you'll find a lot of things there. So how do you measure the educational or social impact of Carl the Collector? Do you look at changes in children's behavior, engagement metrics, or something else? I think I'll start on this.
Yeah.
Does that sound good? Okay. So this series, really, we did a lot of research on the front end for the series. And one of the things that the PBS Learning and Research team did was conduct some focus groups with a mix of neurotypical and neurodiverse kids to try to understand their perceptions of the word autism. Did they even know what the word meant? These are kids between the ages of 4 and 8. So is this a word they were familiar with? Were they familiar with any other characters who had autism? Did they know anyone who had autism? And it was a really interesting set of conversations. A lot of kids had heard the word but didn't necessarily know what it meant. They weren't able to articulate it very well. Some of them could name a character from another show, like AJ on Hero Elementary or Julia on Sesame Street, but a lot of kind of confusion about the word. We then the same group did testing with kids after they watched that episode, The Fall. And what we learned was that kids then cemented what the term meant. And many of the kids in the study were able to say, oh, someone with autism thinks differently, but they can still be a good friend. And so that's really what we were trying to understand, is can a series like this help more people, more kids in particular, understand what this means, and also understand that these are kids who just live in the world differently or approach the world differently than they do, but still can be friends with them. We were also pleased, I know, in those results and seeing the number of kids who, after watching it, were able to say, oh, I know someone like Carl. There's a kid in my class who talks like Carl. And I think that was one of the things that I mean, we knew from the beginning, and we had talked about from the beginning, making sure that the voice actors were also on the spectrum. But I don't think we'd all put together that that's the voice itself, the sound and the tone of the voice would be recognizable to kids, like a way for them to recognize other kids who might be on the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that, my son is one of them where when he speaks, he does speak in a bit of a monotone, kind of like, very level way that some people might feel that he sounds like disengaged or whatever, but it's really not the case at all. It's just his way of speaking, and he's, he gets just as excited as anybody else. It's just his tone, and I know a lot of autistic kids that are like that as well. So I think that is definitely something where, again, Kai, our voice actor, did an incredible job at just being himself, and it comes across on screen, yeah. And we didn't actually edit the voices very much either. Once we get them, we don't go through and try and quicken them up or, get rid of some of the awkward silences there. We leave it all in, and I think that just adds to it for sure.
And I think that research with kids on the spectrum and neurotypical kids was really important, because this is a series for all kids to watch and enjoy. And we wanted kids to see a group of friends. I mean, if you think about it, there are just so many great story ideas that can come out of some of the life stories of many of the writers on the show that just make for exciting television, but testing to make sure that this would really work for all audiences. As you said, this isn't just a show for kids on the spectrum or kids with autism. What kind of research and collaboration went into shaping Carl's character and the world he navigates? This would be a good opportunity to talk about Dr. Stephen Shore, maybe a little bit.
Yeah. So we had a few experts on the show that have helped us right from the beginning, and one of them is Dr. Stephen Shore, and he's an expert on autism. And he travels the world speaking, to all different groups and companies about neurodiverse people, and he's also autistic himself. And he has some just amazing stories of his parents. I don't know how old he is, but when his parents found out that he was autistic, it was still sort of a time period where people were like, maybe you should, put him in this facility and, or whatever. And his parents were like, we're not going to do that. We're going to meet him where he's at and allow him to progress who he is as a human being. And, I forget what the term is for, when you decide to, oh God, totally blanked out. Where I was going with that was
I usually can translate Zach pretty well, but
I know you. I know I didn't give you much to work with. But essentially, he was allowed to just be at home and take watches apart and and put them back together again and stuff. And he was able to learn in his own way that now he's he travels the world and talks to everybody. And he's one of our guiding lights of the show. And he one of his famous quotes that we use as a mantra for the show is, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And that's something we always strive with all these characters to not try to represent everybody, but individual experiences and continually expand that.
I don't know if this is where you're going with it, but he talked about being an interest-led education, that his parents really let him explore his own interests, right? So if it meant he wanted to read about astronomy, they would just let him read and do as much study.
Yeah, and now that's exactly what I was trying to get at. Thank you. And now that there's programs where people, are purposely trying to make that happen, and his parents basically invented it for themselves, and it worked. So that's what's amazing.
When will Paolo's episode air?
Wow, that is a good question.
The more you call PBS, the faster it gets done. So just keep calling, keep calling, keep calling.
There's a hotline for that.
It's still in production.
Yes, we are currently working on that episode right now. Yes.
What year is it? I don't even know.
Like you saw from the clip, that clip, we rushed it so that we could get it here for everyone to see, but it's you'll see the little part where Paolo was working on his AAC device. That was still in animatic form, so it wasn't fully animated, as you could probably tell. But yeah, we're currently working on that right now. I think we're at animation stage. So I think it's past animatics, which means it's past the storyboard stage with sound and everything, and now it's going into animation.
So it'll be next year sometime,
Yeah,
for sure.
early next year.
That's just all we can say.
I was going to say maybe the fall.
Or maybe, I don't know. You'll hear about it. We'll be talking
We'll
about
make
it.
sure you know. For
This is
sure.
a professional operation.
That leads to another good question. Zach, how long did it take to make this series? Like, how long did you work on it?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at with I don't know what year it is. When PBS first came to me, it was like fall of 2015. They were like, hey, we're looking for creators. We like your books. Do you have any show ideas? And I was like, oh yeah, I got ideas. And and I did have a raccoon character with no idea at the moment, but as you can tell, it took almost 10 years. I mean, there was a pandemic and some other stuff in there, but it was a long process. But along the way, all the parts that led up to that, and what Sarah was talking about with like all the testing and focus groups and just making sure that we got this right, it was worth the wait, and I'm just glad it's here.
Well, we're really glad it's here, too. So thank you all so much for being here. You can watch Carl the Collector on your local PBS station. You can also download the PBS Kids video app and localize it to your local station. You can watch on pbskids.org, and you can play Carl games.
And you can play the video games. We got 2 of them out, and they're really, really fun. And free.
Thanks so much for being here. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you,
guys.
Tim. And thank you, Odin.
Thank you, Odin.
Thanks for coming.